Okay, so there are a couple things that we're going to kind of swing back around and get together to do. But for today, and after I've got to go through a bunch of stuff, so you just have to be patient with me. But here on the board, this is like the order to go through it. So first of all, microburst pretest. I'll explain that in a minute. Secondly, the PBS practice submit part 2. So almost everybody, you were gone yesterday, so you'll want to pull that up from yesterday. But there's the second part, so you'll want to go back to PBS, go back to that assignment, see what you're missing, and I'm going to show you a little information about submissions here in just a second, and you'll want to finish that. Intro to Mastering Biology, that's AP Biology. It's on your Mastering Biology count. I got to talk about that a little bit here in a minute. And then the AP Biology Chapter 2, and then vocab. I'm going to talk about this first, which seems counterintuitive since it's the last thing that you'd be working on, but we do a little setup for it. So we talked about your little spots, your number, your spot. The book stays in the classroom here, so you don't have to carry it back and forth. This is Biology in Focus book. So this is actually a condensed version of the actual AP Biology book. So first of all, that's condensed, so we do appreciate that. Secondly, whenever we have tests, I try to kind of help you focus on what material is most important for the test. AP Biology tests are timed tests because the AP Biology test in May is a timed test. So we need to get used to taking timed tests. Any PLTW test, like PBS, HBS, any test for that class, that is something that is not a timed test. It's usually partially on the laptop and partially a paper pencil kind of test. And so it's got, a couple of components to it. That one is not timed. So you can take as much time as you want, but usually what we do is take the test, and whenever you get finished, you have class time to work. So that's up to you. For the PBS HBS test for that class, it's not timed. You cannot use any other outside resources. It would be just like you take your EOC. You sit there, you pull it up, and you have to take the test. For the AP Biology test, you are allowed to use any notes, vocabulary, your personal resources that you use to prepare for the test on the test. You can't use a book, you can't use a computer, you can't look things up, but you can use any notes that you take, you can use any vocabulary that you prepare, you can use any other resources, paper, pencil kind of resources that you use to prepare for the test. But remember, the AP Biology test is a timed test. So if I say that this test is going to cover Chapter 2, standard error graphing, vocab number 1, if you just copy Chapter 2 into your notebook, well, that's not going to be helpful because you're just going to have one big solid chunk of information and you're going to run out of time. So we have to practice, condensing. We have to practice taking notes over things that we need to take notes over. We have to practice being able to get that information onto the test page because in the AP Bio test, the free response question part is the part that kills us every time, all the time. It's kind of like little essay questions. And they're really not too bad. It's just we have to understand what they're asking us and know and practice how to give them the answer that they're asking for. That's some of our biggest issues. So the tests that we take in class, we try to mimic how the actual test is going to be. So you can use your notes on the AP Bio test. You cannot use notes on PBS or HBS tests. So you know what, and a couple weeks before the test, as soon as I know that when the test is going to be, I'll put it on Canvas, and then you know how you can click on the link and it'll give you information about the assignment. In that spot right there, it'll say what the test covers. So for our first unit test, it'll say this test covers Chapter 2, vocab number 1, standard error graphing. I think that's what it's going to cover. I can't remember off the top of my head. But at any rate, when you pull that up and you read through that stuff and you're like, oh, standard error graphing, I have no idea what that means. That means you need to get that taken care of. Because if it's listed there, I am promising you that there are questions that are going to be on that test about standard error. So if you don't know what it is, if you don't know how to find it, you need to make sure you find out before the test. If it says Chapter 2, then there's going to be information on there that from Chapter 2 that covers the test. So this says AP Bio, that's what the APB stands for. Chapter 2, these are the concepts. It's like the sections. So 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, that says to read. I want you to read over that material. Chances are a lot of that stuff is going to be stuff that you've gotten in this science class in the past. Excuse me. Or a lot of that stuff is stuff that's really good to know, but it's not what we're focusing on in this unit for the test in here. Then it says 2.5 notes. That means for that section, I want you, hey, would you kick out that doorstop when you come in? That means for that section, you need to take notes on that section. That means when it says 2.5 notes that there are going to be questions on the test that you're taking in class that come from that section. Now, the stuff that's up here, you can apply to it, but it's not like going to be, so let's say 2.1 is bonding. I think it's bonding. And it's ionic bonds or something like that. Up here, that means there is not going to be a test question that says, give an example of an ionic bond, or what kind of bond puts these two molecules together. There's not going to be something like that. And guys, if you would just put those laptops aside for just a second, because Mrs. Johnson gets jealous when she doesn't have your full attention when she's doing her song and dance. But if you get to 2.5 and it's talking about molecules or something like that in relationships, you could refer to it, and you can say because of ionic bonds or because of ionic bond. You could say that. That's fine. But that just is telling you that there's not going to be a specific question about ionic bonds. It's going to be about the stuff that's in 2.5, which I happen to know is properties of water. But bonding is what causes properties of water, so that's where it kind of all blends in. And I don't remember what 2.1 is, so you'll have to look at that and see what that is. So that's what that means. This is not an assignment. These notes are not an assignment. I do not grade that. This is a resource that you create for yourself to use on the test. You do not want to copy that word for word from the book into your notebook, because that is not a good resource. And I'll give you some little hints here in just a second. Then we'll talk about vocab in just a minute. There's a vocab file on there and vocabulary terms, and some of the terms it gives you the definition. Any term that it does not give you the definition for, it will be in the back of your book. Please, for the love of Bill Nye, do not go and Google any of our vocab terms, because what you get from Google is probably not going to apply to AP biology. Perfect example, I used to teach middle school, and I would do, one of the vocab terms was volume. And for volume, they would always write the loudness or quietness of a sound. Well, that had nothing to do with what we were talking about, because volume for us was the amount of space something took up. So don't use Google, don't Google search them. Use your textbook or use the online textbook to find the definitions to those terms. Now the vocab, should you do the vocab, you can earn bonus points for vocab. It is not an assignment. I don't pick it up and grade it. It doesn't have a due date. Essentially, both of these things would be due the day of the test, because if you're going to use it, you have to have it with you. You cannot use the computer, so then if you didn't do vocab 1, but you know the definitions that some of the terms are on there, you can't go back and look up those definitions on the computer. You can't use a laptop. You can't use the book, but you can use whatever resources you make for yourself for the test. Oh, that's what I was going to say. You do not want to do this the night before the test. You do not want to do that the night before the test. You don't want to do that. Because first of all, you're going to be up way too long, and all you're going to be doing is, copying stuff down. You're not going to be pulling any of that information in. It's not going to make any sense to you. And then on the test itself, it's not going to make any sense. It's not going to mean anything to you. We don't take a lot of time in class to do these sort of things. Most of the time, these are homework sort of things. AP classes, they are designed that you do stuff outside of class. But bell work, like I know next week there's at least one day that the bell work while we're waiting for everybody to get here is going to be work on your chapter 2 or your vocabulary. That's designated. Anytime that you get done with stuff in class and you have time, free time, then you can swing back around and work on that. But most of that will be taken care of outside of class. All right, so let's look at this first. Spiral notebook. Should have name, AP Bio on the front page. Nathaniel, Logan, do you guys have a spiral notebook? If not, I've got some on the corner of the table here. So I happen to know that section 2.5 has to do with water properties. And so you need notes, information about water properties to help you, because there's going to be questions on the test that cover that. I am not always going to kind of outline this stuff for you. We're easing our way into this information, so we're easing our way into this. So first page right here, at the very top, go ahead and copy that down. Chapter 2, this is the concepts that you read, the sections that you read. That's the one that you take your notes on. So this is on the first page. Copy that down on the top. Oh, hey, Mrs. Johnson. The screen's not on. Duh, right there. Could you not see that? Come on, people, work with me. Yeah, you're going to have to do that a lot, because I see it up here and it's on my screen on the TV, and then I forget to look over here, so it's kind of like checking the buttons. When you take notes or do vocabulary, we try to reinforce the Cornell style of note-taking. And so what that means is you have like a concept, you know, a phrase or a few short terms or a word or something like that, and then you have the notes that apply to that. So, and let me show you this whole page first before I zoom in on it. So on this page right here, 2.5, the different things that they talk about within that section is they talk about water properties, like the fact that it's a polar molecule, cohesion, adhesion, specific heat, heat of vaporization, ice floats on liquid and water. So these are very short phrases, terms, pieces of information, and then this is going to be my notes. And these notes over here, I'm not going to copy stuff word for word. So let's say before I had a teacher that really loved density and went hog wild for density, and so I know everything I need to know about density. Well, you're not going to take that very many notes on density, because you know all about who, what, where, when, why, how that works. So you're just going to put any additional information that you might need to know about it. And so the rest of them you might need to put a little bit more. When you're taking the test and it's those essay-style questions, sometimes you're like, okay, cohesion, I've heard that before. I don't know how to start. I don't know, how to write a sentence. On my test, on the AP Biology test, diagrams are fine. And in fact, I highly encourage them, because for me, the visual thing is a really good thing, because I can draw a picture of it. So like if I'm thinking cohesion and I don't know what to draw, and don't write this down because this is my diagram. But if I've got a picture that I can write down, so I start by writing the picture, and then I start talking about what that picture is. Because you can't just write a picture. You have to describe it. Why did you draw that picture? What does that mean? But that gives me a starting point. Okay, this is what this is. This is a water molecule. This is another water molecule. And then I describe why I drew that to represent cohesion, and that helps me to answer the question. So I highly recommend diagrams. That's another reason why we only do Cornell notes. We do it on the right-hand side page, is because the left-hand side page, that gives us a little bit more room to put any additional information that you want. So then when I have other stuff, I put it just on the right-hand side page and not on the back of that, so in case I need a little extra room. On each of these sections, I've only got like about 5 lines on here. We don't need... Once again, you don't need to rewrite the entire textbook. It's not going to be helpful for you. You don't want a big solid chunk of writing. You want phrases, you want short sentences, you want examples of, okay, so what does polar mean? What's a polar molecule? How does it make, you want little diagrams, examples, and stuff like that. Just, once again, to trigger you and, to trigger your thought process so that you know what to write when you're answering a question. Setting it up this way so we don't have a solid chunk also makes it easier to find. So you have a question, a test question that deals with specific heat. It's a lot easier to find stuff about specific heat rather than having a big chunk of information that then you end up having to read through again to find the information that you want and then figure out how to apply it. Time is not our friend with the AP Bio test. Because it's time, we want to squeeze every second that we can out of it, and anything that we waste time on hurts us and hurts the score. So even like if we make a mistake, we don't erase, that takes too much time. We don't scribble it out, that takes too much time. You draw a line through it and you move on. We are about efficiency for that test because we need to find every second that we can so we have the time to write the answer that we want to write. So this is the chapter. You read those sections. That's what you're going to take notes over. I'm not always going to give you this information. We're going to, ease into it though. So these would definitely be the concepts that you need to know, or that definitely need to be the topics that you need to know. And like I said, I've got about 5 lines in between each one. So polar molecule, cohesion, adhesion, specific heat. You can write it vertical, horizontal, however you want. You can write it on a diagonal. If you need to take more room than the red margin line, that's fine too. We just need to make sure that we are, I cannot multitask, that we are, showing a separation between whatever concept we're talking about and our notes for that. Polar molecule, cohesion, adhesion, specific heat. Heat of vaporization. Ice floats on liquid water. Which is basically talking about that. Okay, then I have 3 concepts that are on the next page. And I could have probably divided the page into 3s. It really doesn't matter. As I give you less and less information, you don't have to set up your page before you start taking notes. So it's 2.5. The first little section is polar molecule. So you just do polar molecule, and then whenever you finish your notes for that, draw a line. Then put your next piece of information there. And then whenever you finish notes for that, then just draw a line, because that's just separating those sections out. So you can see, okay, this doesn't have anything to do with polar molecule anymore. It has to do with cohesion. So you don't always have to make it even sections or something like that. There's not a set format that you have to do for it. They're your notes. You take them however you want. And that being said, there's nothing to stop you from recopying the book and having a solid chunk of information. It's not helpful. It's not beneficial to you. And I need to force you guys to see that, because chances are up to this point, that's probably how you've taken notes. But the notes need to be information that you feel is important to you. And yes, 100%. You sit down at a test and you've got these beautiful notes and you're like, oh, wait a minute. This is entirely not the stuff that's on the test. It does happen from time to time. Now, I try to help you focus on what is important, but there might be something where you realize, I remember reading that, but I took notes on everything around that right there. And that's just practice. When you get to college, they're going to say chapter 3, 4, 5 is on this test. You need to have that information. So we need to start practicing, and we're doing it by breaking it into little delicious bites instead of having this big chunk that you can't possibly swallow without choking on anyway. So we have to get used to that to get into there, because have you taken notes before even? I mean, I'm not talking about the teacher saying up there, write this down. I'm talking about the teacher saying, you need notes over chapter 2. Have you done that before? A few of you haven't? Okay, so that's what we need to get used to and have practice on doing. All right, second page. Like I said, I could have divided it out into thirds. I don't know. That's what I did. So it really doesn't matter. Like I said, there's no specific format. So I wrote H2O here. What does H2O stand for? Water. I could have written out water, W-A-T-E-R. Instead, I chose to write 3 letters. I know that's a huge saving in time, but that's just supposed to be an example. Anytime that you have an abbreviation, use an abbreviation. If you need to write out the word, but if you can abbreviate it, abbreviate it. These are not like something that's super formal. So H2O, solvent. So this is the section that's talking about H2O as being the universal solvent. Hydrophilic, hydrophobic, molarity, acid, bases, pH scale. So you read through that section and the pH scale and information about acids and bases. You've known all that stuff before. You've already gone. You don't take notes over stuff that you already know. You only need to take notes over stuff that you're not familiar with or that you don't understand. Some of you that took biology right before you came in here, maybe more of the terms are familiar to you than others that had physical science before you came in here. So your notes are your resource. Your notes are not an assignment. I'm not picking it up and grading it. It is a resource for you. Your vocab can go to bonus points, but it has to be complete. And then you're not going to turn that in for bonus points until after we take the test, because you can use the vocab on the test. So you don't want to turn that in early. That's the only thing in this class that you don't want to turn in early, because if it's vocabulary and I see it there, that's probably going to be something that I kind of put off to the side unless I have time to grade. I'm going to grade, homework assignments first, because if it's vocabulary, it's not as important. So don't turn that in until after the test. Okay, so that's notes. The vocab is set up the same way. So this is on a separate sheet of paper because we used to put it in the binder instead of the spiral notebook, and now we just have it all in one place, so it's easier. But you're going to do the same thing. And this is a perfect example of how, okay, so having the red line was not enough room for me, so I used a little bit more than that line, and my OCD requires separating them. It's like, peas and carrots on my plate or peas and mashed potatoes. They can't, I don't want them to mix. So I want my concepts and my notes to be separated from each other and be designated that way. So that's what I do. Your notes are your resource, so you can adjust it to however you want. But we don't want a big solid chunk. So vocab term separated on the side, and then you'll have the definition. And then I would recommend a line, vocab term, definition, and we're only writing on the right-hand side page. And then when you fold it over, so I said I needed a little bit more information on it. You put on there whatever you need, anything additional that you need to help you out. This will be in your spiral notebook as well. Make sure that you know which one are notes and which one are vocab. That kind of helps out just a little bit when you're labeling it. Now, chances are the next time we do this, and I give you, here's the vocab, here's the notes, I would probably do the vocab first, because that's going to be a lot easier. All you're doing is copying stuff down for vocab. You're just getting the definitions and putting the definitions down, and maybe adding your own little touch to examples and stuff to that. Notes are a little bit more complicated, because you have to read, comprehend, and decide what you write down. So that's going to take more time, and you have no idea, how much space that's going to take up. So you would probably do vocab first and then do notes. But honestly, I don't care. Just make sure that you leave yourself enough room to put all the stuff in there. Any questions about this so far? Did everybody get what they needed? Can I close that? Okay, so that's the last things that you're working on once you have time. So let's go back. Oh, it keeps. Oh, and I closed everything out. Would you? I wish that it would give me a little warning before it did that, but no. It's not going to do that. All right, so let's go to Canvas and talk about that real quick. Most everybody did make a submission. One of the things that I want to point out, a question was kind of given to me about, how do I know that something was turned in, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a couple of ways that can help you out. So one of the students in the morning class, they submitted through Google Docs, and for some reason Canvas is being twitchy with Google Docs right now. So we found a workaround, and we figured out how to submit things. But she didn't know whether or not her stuff was submitted. So this is the home page, and I always recommend that you start with the home page because this is where I try to organize our information. Assignments, the assignment was your practice submission. And so if you go here and you click on that, remember that's going to give you information about the assignment. New attempt, resubmit, anything like that will allow you to attach something else. But notice that I have on here the files. Hang on just a second. I do need to kind of go this way. I put it over here. Just a second. So I need 6 more sets of this. And I think what we used before is we used the tag board and put it on the tag board. And then I need it to be laminated because we'll use it over and over again. And then the copies, I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Thank you. But once you put and submit it on there, then you can see where these files are attached, and it's even going to tag, the time on there. You can double check. Well, AP Bio, was that the right document? Was that the one I was supposed to? So you click on it, and it's going to pull that document up, and I'm like, oh, no, that's not my homework assignment. That's the wrong assignment. So then I have to put a different file on there that's the actual correct document. So you have control over that. If you're not sure whether your document is on there or not, you can always go back and check. Another really important feature that you may not have seen yet, if you go on grades, when you go on grades, it's going to tell you that something was submitted on there. It's going to tell you that there's a comment on there so that you can look at that. If you are on the grades tab and you click the assignment, it allows you to resubmit stuff. So it's never going to take anything off. You can't delete anything off of there. It's just going to add another file, and that's fine. So if I see this and it's a student, I'm going to go and grade whichever one was the one that was attached last. And then if I look at that and see it's attached last and see that half of it's missing, then maybe I'll go back up to this one and see, well, maybe is that the one that I was supposed to look at? So unless you leave me a comment and saying, hey, please grade the first one, not the second one, or something like that, then I'll probably look at the one that was attached last because I'm going to assume that that's the one that you finished and put on there. So yes, you can always go back and add something else on there, upload another file, and it'll add another file to that. So that's a really helpful tool for you guys to use. So one of the other things you're doing is to submit, practice submit part 2. If you can't remember, instructions are here, and all that stuff's on there for you. Okay, next. Yes, I can get to it on here. Mastering biology. Oh. I should have done that, probably. So, the PLTW account that you set up, we don't use that very often. I have one more person that's going to be setting that up today, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and click that off so that you don't even see that, and so it's not a distraction. Mastering Biology account we do use quite often. First of all, I got to get out of student view before I can go there. First of all, it has your textbook on it. And second of all, there are assignments that we do through Mastering Biology. Same thing, once Xavion gets done registering and Mastering Biology, then I'll take that off there so you won't see that. But this is the link, this is the link, this is the link, this is the link to get to your Mastering Biology login account. So you have to copy and paste, because it's not an active link. So you have to copy that, and you have to paste it, and it will take you to your login page. Once you get to your login page, you click sign in. It will ask for your name and password, and then it will take you to a page that looks like this. So that is your book, your textbook. When you click on that, I'm going to take this one off of here. When you click on that, you should have something that looks somewhat similar to this. Yours is a little bit different. But it'll have a spot that says assignments, and you'll be able to click on that and go to the Introduction to Mastering Biology assignment. This assignment is a completion grade. It wants you to explore. It wants you to get stuff wrong, to see what happens when you get stuff wrong. It wants you to use the hints to see what happens when you have to use a hint. It wants you to do that. So it's a completion grade. Please explore and look around. This right here, this tab right here, this tab that I'm pointing to right here, this is your textbook. So Pearson eText is your electronic textbook. When you click that, it opens a page like this, and then you have to open my eTextbook. This is a really interesting resource. It has, if you have access to internet, it has online features to it that you can use. If you don't have access to internet at home, but you have your own personal computer, when you're here, you can open this up and take it home and use the book portion of it. You just won't be able to use any of the interactive stuff. Like you won't be able to click on things because you need the internet for that. But you will have the textbook portion of it, because once you download the textbook portion of it, you can use it as a book, if you're okay with that. I hate reading on tablets and stuff like that. So there's a table of contents. You can go to wherever you want in your table of contents. It's got some audiobook options. You can take notes in there. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. There are some study things that will help you kind of go over stuff, so that's helpful too. So it's got a lot of really nice little things that go along with it, and it's really handy to use. You can click on it, and it's going to give you definitions. So it's nice, but you do have to have internet to use it. So that's your textbook is here, course home. That's where your assignments are at. Right? So this is what you're going to start doing until I interrupt you. Oh, and I forgot about microbursts. Where did I put those little slips at? Number 1 is the one thing that I didn't even talk about. Okay, so I'm going to close this out because I don't need it. This microburst pretest, it is just a pretest. It is from the Career Connection Center, so if things go wonky on it, and there was a couple students this morning that I cannot multitask. Hold on. HTTPS tcsoft.skillsmicroburst.elearning.com. Okay. And there were a couple of students that things were wonky this morning, and all I can do is say, hey, I'll email Career Connection Center, and we'll see if everything went through or not. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. Watch out for the e-learning, because that took me forever this morning to realize why I was spelling it wrong. You sign in. Username, password, sign in. It's a pretest. It's only going to be one component that's unlocked. That's the one that you do. You run through and do that little pretest. There's going to be a lot of reading associated with it. You do not have to spend a lot of time on this pretest. So you're going to go through the microburst class, and then at the end, when you take your post-test, then yes, we want you to read it carefully and think about your answers. But for now, this should not take a lot of your time. So if you're taking more than 30 seconds on a question, then maybe we just need to look, hey, that A, I haven't done A in a while, B in a while, whatever, and go through it a little bit more quickly. It is not something that needs to stress us out today. We got plenty of things that we need to do. This is just a pretest. When you take the post-test, then yes, we want to take time and we want to make careful, thoughtful decisions and answers to those questions. But we're not trying to ace this test right now. So that's the microburst. That's number 1 on here. Do the microburst pretest. Once you get done with that, go ahead and move on. You're not waiting for us to do the practice submit part 2. If you've got that done, when you get that done, you're not waiting for us. Go ahead and move on. Work on to the Introductory to Mastering Biology assignment. When you've got that done, go ahead and start working on your Chapter 2 notes. You're not waiting for us. And that's going to be a little bit more of the setup next week. There are still things that we have to do together today and pretty much all the time, but a lot of it you're working at your own pace. Whatever you get done, you don't take care of outside of class. All right, do you have any questions for me? Are we good?